October 22nd, 2018. We are not all here this evening, so I need just to announce that Councilman Waratano will not be with us. All right, there's only one item on the agenda. I'd like to remind council we're to change this a little bit, so we're going to let you break up your questions. If you have something, raise your hand, ask to be seen. So items 3.1, council receive a presentation regarding emerging topics in development regarding these 3 points. Industrial development trends and impact of the Bullard Avenue. Number 2, land use along the freeways. And number 3, single-family residential rental projects. Development Service Director Christopher Baker will be with his team will be presenting. Christopher?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening. Katie, Harry, Lori, and I are delighted to be with you to have a conversation tonight in regards to these 3 emerging topics. In addition to us sitting here, the planning department is here as well in order to listen firsthand to the conversation because we are all your representatives, so to speak, and certainly it's helpful to hear that conversation firsthand. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity tonight to have this discussion. I'd like to also point out that these are pretty meaty topics, and if there's no pressure to get through all 3 of them tonight, so just in case the conversation goes long on one of them, if there's anything that we don't get to tonight, we will schedule a follow work session. So with that, we're just going to jump right in. First of all, as you all have witnessed and seen, the development activity in the city of Goodyear has increased quite dramatically over the last couple of years. As you can note from this chart on the right, that indicates the number of development applications that have been reviewed by the planning department. And as you can see, they have more than doubled since 2015, excuse me. So as a result of this increase in development activity, we have hosted many pre-applications meetings on potential projects that sometimes we're uncertain on the direction to give the potential applicants. And our desire is to give very clear, direct, actionable information to these customers and potential projects so that they have an appropriate avenue to move forward. With that regard, we also want to represent council's desires, your priorities, and the direction that you set for the city. So that's the purpose of tonight's discussion. We're going to discuss, as the mayor indicated, 3 different topics. What's going on in the industrial marketplace, also vacant property along our freeways, and the single-family residential rental type of projects as well. Again, as I mentioned, these are pretty meaty topics. We're going to pause in between the sections so that we can have a conversation with each one individually. So with that being said, the first topic we're going to discuss tonight is industrial development. I'm going to turn this over to Harry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. So first of all, I want to give you a little bit of a recap as to where we've been in the last several years. Since 2015, the city's been very fortunate to attract several large projects, totaling about 6 million square feet. Only about 600,000 of that square feet was in existing buildings. So that totaled approximately since 2015, about 400 acres of property being absorbed in our in property that was planned or zoned as industrial. That created more than 3,100 jobs. About 35% of that is manufacturing jobs. Generally, we're about a 40-60 split manufacturing as opposed to warehouse jobs in our industrial sector. The greater Phoenix market certainly is very strong in industrial development right now, and fortunately, Goodyear is in a very good position. We have several shovel-ready sites that are very attractive along our freeway corridors and in other areas of the city. I've been fortunate over the years to have several developers that are very aggressive and have won several of those projects. And because our market's been strong, we're continuing to see interest in spec buildings. We've had a few spec buildings built over the last year or two, and we have more in the works that are coming. So things are looking well for Goodyear in terms of industrial development, not just today, but coming in the future, the near future. So the current state, if you look at our city north of the Gila River, we're about 6,200 acres that is either zoned or designated for industrial development. What is occupied today is only about 25% of that, so about 4,600 acres today is available. Of that 4,600 acres, about 2,600 of that is south of I-10, but another 2,000 acres is north of I-10. If we look at projects looking forward from today through 2019, we have several projects in the pipeline, projects that will basically rival what we've done in the last several years since 2015. In fact, we're projecting today, if these projects come forward, and most of them are pretty sure, about 6 million square feet of industrial activity could be under construction this next year. Now, to give you a sense as to where we've been and where we've come from, about 5 to 6 years ago, we were only a market in our city of about 6 million square feet constructed of industrial development. We could potentially do that all next year if these projects come forward. That would absorb, we're estimating right now today, about 360 acres this next year. So we have a lot of acreage still remaining. Certainly we want to be strategic as we go forward and develop that acreage. About 25% built out, still a considerable amount of industrial acreage available.
Thank you, Harry. So as Harry mentioned, there's a lot of activity that we're really excited about advancing forward to construction. Even with all of that activity, about 75% of the area zoned or planned for industrial is vacant. And as such, we've had pre-apps with lots of, or I should say several potential projects seeking to rezone property from one designation to add to that inventory of industrial properties. And sometimes, depending on those particular locations, we're unclear if council would like to utilize the vacant industrial parcels or to add additional industrial property to the city.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So one of the areas that Christopher alluded to that we've been getting a lot of development inquiries on is Bullard Avenue, particularly from Van Buren Street to Yuma Road. And the reason we wanted to touch base with you on this is to give, I know many of you would know this history, but we do have some newer council members. But there was a plan on the books to add a second entrance to the Phoenix Goodyear Airport that would be on the west side of the airport at Bullard Avenue. This is in some of their older plans. And so there was this plan that came about that Bullard Avenue from I-10 to the airport could be this business entrance, take advantage of that business entrance to the airport, and that Bullard Avenue could be a high-density employment corridor with also a lot of office, support retail uses. We then developed the ballpark off of Bullard Avenue, so that further enhanced that corridor as an entry feature to Goodyear. Staff has been administering that policy, and the property owners in the area are also aware of that desire and policy from council at the time to discourage lower employment uses such as big box distribution centers from locating directly on Bullard Avenue. However, there have been some changes in recent years. One, that plan to move that business entrance is not included in the new Phoenix Goodyear Airport Master Plan. They have to do some different design on the interior of the airport to fit in the second runway. And so likely that second entrance will be on the west side, but it'll be a service entrance, not a business entrance. It's also not currently funded. And it may be anywhere from Bullard Avenue to 143rd Avenue. There's not a direct location. So relying on that in the near term, you know, it may or may not happen, and it's likely not going to be that business entrance we thought it was. We've also received a lot of develop inquiries that we think City Council would be interested in. And this map kind of shows there's at least 4 different projects that are in different stages of the development process right now. Some of these inquiries have been related to data center development, which is traditionally a low employment use, high paying jobs. There is also sometimes design challenges with those type of uses because of the design needs of how to make the building structurally sound. It's a little more difficult to add some of the architectural detail to the buildings. But again, furthermore, this would also require rezoning. As you can see from the areas, how it's zoned, and I'll try and explain it, it highlights that original plan. The 2 pink corners at Bullard and Van Buren.
Point?
Thank you.
Want a point?
Christopher. So this is a commercial corner here next to the development. I probably touched it. Thank you. And then this is another commercial corner at Yuma and Bullard. I swear I am not touching it. I just won't use the mouse. The purple area is light industrial, and then the green is agricultural urban, which is somewhat a placeholder zoning district. So we have received inquiries to zone the commercial corners from commercial to industrial. And staff is certainly open to this, and we just wanted to check in with our policy on that. So what we think could happen in this area is opening up the uses to maybe uses we used to discourage, such as data centers, even some distribution centers. It is quite a large area to have just offices in this area, but hold greater design standards, focus mostly on the landscaping. Now, thank you. There are examples of this, such as Price Road Corridor, and you click again, and the top picture is Cotton Center in the East Valley as well. And what they've done is, these are 2 examples of enhanced entry features. So our economic development group can work with the property owners on branding the area, creating cohesive entry features at Bullard and Yuma and Bullard and Van Buren, so you have this sense of arrival, and it gives it this nice business park feel. If you want to go to the next slide. This is a property in that Cotton Center. We wouldn't allow turf in the right-of-way, but that is a data center in the distance. That's actually kind of a plain building for most of it, but you can see they've used berming and landscaping setbacks and walls to screen the view. And so it still has a very attractive, high-quality business center feel to it, but they've allowed different types of users in on those parcels. If you go. So kind of looking at how that might fit in the larger area. So right along I-10, between I-10 and Van Buren, is the Airport Gateway at Goodyear, PAD, and that's the area that surrounds Cancer Treatment Center of America. That's preliminarily zoned, and it is zoned for office uses, higher employment, and we would recommend keeping that as a future innovation district, high employment, high density employment office, Class A office. Development. It's a good size for that type of development. And then with the location on the I-10, it's fit for that. On the Bullard Wash, which is the lighter purple, Bullard Avenue, I'm sorry, which is the lighter purple colored, that's where we would recommend allowing the rezoning to industrial, but holding higher standards. So for example, our current landscape setback for an industrial building is 30 feet. And in this area, perhaps it would be 50, 60 feet to allow some more berming, and then put in those commercial corners. And then this road would be planned to have a median, which would allow more landscaping. It could limit some of the access, but would have, again, give it that business park feel. But then the areas surrounding that, such as 143rd Avenue, which also already has a lot of development happening, and the area south of Yuma, City Center Air Park, those areas are already zoned for industrial development, and that could be traditional industrial development. The buildings that are already existing have developed under those standards, so if that type of development is what you like, that could continue in those areas. I did also want to point out the old, what we still refer to as the old Trotter Track site. We have had some development inquiries on that site for distribution warehouse type uses, and we have discouraged those uses because of its location at the 303 and I-10. We felt that council would want to see office, maybe even some kind of outdoor entertainment. We're not quite sure. It's unlikely to develop at office in the next year, couple years, but to let it go to big box industrial, when, as you heard earlier, we do still have a lot of industrial land undeveloped in the city. There are other opportunities at this time.
So Mayor and Council, this map right here I'm going to refer to in just a second is called the staff development concept. So when I ask you the question, and I'm going to come back to this, when I ask you the question, are you supportive of the staff development concept? It's this, what's represented by the concepts on this map. So we would like to ask you that question and get your feedback and direction.
Now,
Yes, ma'am, now.
okay.
Thank you.
Open council. Councilman Stiff?
With this map in mind, can you go back to, I think it's slide 8? It's the one with all the greens in it, that one. So we have 4 projects, actually 5 if you include 1B, that are already in review and development, so to speak. Under the current zoning, et cetera. I mean, no enhancement, no, just under current guidelines, correct?
That is correct. I think some of them are anticipating the need for
This
enhancement
Okay,
already.
because that was where I was going, because slide 12, where you just were, says, hey, we want to do this, this is that area, but with enhanced, and I guess from an economic development standpoint, I want to make sure we're not going to push people away from the table because we want to enhance this area. So I like the concepts. I'm completely open to that. I just want to make sure we're not going to do anything detrimental to the folks that are already, quote unquote, in the pipeline. Can I get a reassurance on that or an amen?
Agreed.
And while you do that, could you sort of talk about what they're looking at to build? Is there any enhancements on them? Have they discussed anything with you on something different that the buildings look like and the ones that are already?
So, Mayor, Council, what we wanted to get from you all, because essentially all these projects have to have a zoning action. We didn't want to encourage these prospects to come through if you were opposed to it.
That's why I,
So-
it's null and void, right? I mean, we just don't know anything. All right.
So, but we do have several in review, as Katie alluded to, that we've had conversations with enhancing the front
All right.
and the image on Bullard and those that are on the corners on Yuma specifically. And those particular property owners and applicants have been very open to working with us in order to provide an enhancement.
Okay.
To Councilmember Stipp's point, these applications are in the pipeline now, so we can't really change the standards for them, nor do we have time to, but we can work with them. They've been very amenable and very open to working with us, and that's really what we would like to accomplish.
I just wanted to clarify a little bit more. All right. Go ahead, Bill. You're
So-
not finished.
It looks like Lori wants to, no, you're good? Okay.
We're good unless you have other questions.
No, so for me personally, I'm in support of the policy changes. I know when we met with the property owner in Project 4, they were producing a pretty decent looking product already, and they share both Yuma and Bullard from the intersection perspective. And I think it's time that we really start to break some of the other hard and fast rules that we had and become much more flexible and adaptable. And this seems to be the way to do that without violating the general plan. So,
Thank you,
good.
Bill. Joe?
I remember years ago, we were looking at Bullard as an overlay district to try to get the developers so we could dress it up, because that's kind of the gateway. From my perspective, we're in the forever business, so I would like to see some enhancements on anything on Bullard. If we're going to give up the overlay for that gateway piece in there, I would like to see some of that. And I would like to see some diversity in there instead of big box distributors lining Bullard. I'm not a big fan of that in that area. okay? So, I can appreciate, Councilman Stipp's position. But since we're in the forever business, and that was our initial intent, was we were gonna put money into that Bullard Avenue, we were gonna put a nice entryway in through there, and that was gonna be kind of like a signature. What I hate to see is the old just solid walls, concrete going up with no major enhancements. I like what we did on 303. I like what we did with, what is it, REI. I like what we did with Sub-Zero. Inside, they can do whatever they want, okay? But outside, as you're going down that highway, and especially heading down there towards our ballpark in the area that we would like to see enhanced, I would like to see you work with them to try to at least dress the outside up so it looks very amenable as people come into our city.
Brandon?
So to your point, Katie, about the entryway possibly changing, could that entryway if it does eventually go that way, would the roads be wide enough? Would the area still be able to be a gateway would it be closing it up, or would it be narrowing it down, or to make it the enhancements, I guess is what I'm asking.
Thank you. We would work with the property owners an entry feature doesn't have to take up that much land to present itself as, you've arrived at this destination, at this business corridor. We don't have anything on the books today for those entry features, but since those corners do need to be rezoned, the council, that would be coming to council for approval, so you could approve it if there's enhanced features. In our discussions with the potential users of the site, they've been open to adding amenities such as that. If we would add an entry feature and you approved the zoning, that sounds like a good partnership.
Okay. And then, yeah, I'm okay with this change here. I don't know if some of the amenities would also include like a corporate park or a corporate outdoors type areas for them to walk around, or benches and things like that. I don't know if that's the spot, and I'm curious if they're going to have anywhere, if we're going to take away the commercial ends, something anywhere for them to get. Hopefully there'll be quite a few people working there that they can go somewhere to eat or other things like that. So it's not like they'll have to drive out of that area, but it's a question, not, but.
So, Mayor, Councilmember Hampton, I think within the particular confines of Van Buren to Yuma, that's likely to be, as Katie was alluding to, data center, some logistical as well. And so there probably won't be restaurants and things in nature on that particular segment of the corridor. Maybe north of there specifically, maybe on the west side of Bullard as you get closer to I-10. Or certainly it's not terribly far to Litchfield, the intersection with Litchfield and or Australia Parkway. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious if the north was zoned that way to accommodate those kind of things. And then talking about the zoning, I know going back to the one with all this one right here. So down by the airport there,
Bring that microphone up.
down by the airport, the farthest block down by the airport. So that area, how it's zoned there currently, that could be. I mean, it could be a lot of things, but it could also be aerospace related type thing, a larger manufacturer or something that could maybe even, I don't know, make airplanes, but whatever it could be down there, that it doesn't limit our use down there, that way it's zoned now.
That's correct. It's zoned industrial. It's zoned PAD, which allows for industrial uses, so it certainly allows those uses. It would allow other uses such as warehouses, distribution centers, but it allows all those uses too.
But we can control those potential uses, right? I mean, in a way.
No,
Well, I guess once it's
already
zoned, once it's zoned,
so they already have it. Now, certainly the city might be able to influence those through different incentives. If there is zoning changes they need to make a certain development happen, city council has leeway in those decisions.
Okay.
But most of that property, if there was a distribution center that wanted to go in there, they'd be able to move forward today if they did the infrastructure improvements they need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that the city council has done that And that parcel, we have had some interest, if we're talking the parcel right adjacent to the airport on the west side. We have had some interest for distribution. However, those distribution, cross-dock distribution doesn't really line up that well on that property, given that we limit the amount of dock doors you can have facing an arterial street. And specifically, I believe Bullard is a scenic arterial street. So some of those things that may not be that conducive to the big distribution that we typically see, but maybe could get up to 50% or so.
Okay.
Depending on how it all lays out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in my mind, I hope that farther down there next to the ballpark can eventually, I mean, won't detract from anything that's hopefully entertainment or hotels and things like that down that way, but. Okay, other than that, I think I'm good, thank you.
Wally?
All right, I have several questions. Do you have a map that shows the 6,200 acres that are zoned and shows us where the 4,600 are vacant, to put all of this in perspective so we know? I don't get any of the presentations, so
So,
tonight, do you have it?
Mayor, Council, we do not have that specific map. We did
yes.
some research on what's vacant and added up the totals. So, but we can create one for you and get it to you. We don't have it
I'd like
here
to
tonight.
see that. I'd like to see where we're developing in our city and what's left, and I want to know where the 6,200 acres that are open, if it's scattered throughout the city, fine, or just so that I have a perspective of what we're talking about. So for projects 1, 2, 3, and 4, on the green and the pink ones, how many acres is that?
So I know that project 4 is roughly 115 acres. Project 3, I believe, is about 60 or 70 acres roughly. I'm not sure about project 2.
Project 2 is about 50, I believe.
Harry said about 50 or so.
It's not quite 50.
And then project number 1 is quite large. It goes all the way from Yuma, 3/4 of the way, all the way up to Van Buren.
Goes from the APS site up.
Further down, all the way at Yuma, project number 1 goes all the way from Yuma, yeah, thank you, Katie, to that line,
Uh-huh.
to right there.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right, well, I've got a little different take. I like the idea of developing the Bullard corridor because the vacant lots are disconcerting after a while because you don't think anything's ever gonna come. So I would like to see it built. I would like us to be creative with the developers while we can ask them to put more berms in and to do this, that, and the other. Let them use artificial grass. I think that's pretty. It's no water, and if they want to use some of that in the front, I would hope that the city allows that. Do we? Or do we not?
We would allow it from a development standards standpoint. I don't know off the top of my head if we have any restrictions on artificial turf in the right of way.
Okay, well, I don't know about the right of way because that's an awful lot to do.
Yeah.
But, maybe that would soften the building and make it look a little nicer. And I know they can use water features, but then, that's a problem. Would you go to the map where you have right by the Cancer Treatment Centers of America? That one, yes. Nope, not that one. That one, thank you. All right, for the Trotter site, it is somewhat the entrance to Goodyear, but I would hope that we would be open to some suggestion that maybe we haven't thought of for that area, because we want to get it developed. It's such a huge blank area. And there may be something we didn't even think of, and it may not be entertainment, and it may not be an office building, but it may be something that would work with us. And I would hope that we would entertain it at least, just to see. I just don't want to turn a developer away. And then for the building that you want, an office building right by CTCA, I agree. However, they are putting, are you thinking of another medical center or doctor's offices, or what are you thinking there? Because that could be another 25 years down the road.
I think the question that we're asking Mayor, Vice Mayor is with regards to around CTCA, is council's vision to have that industrial or something else?
Okay, so we could say something else, and that would be something else.
Correct. Whether that, what we have on there is office, innovation, things of that nature. If there was an entertainment, you know, we would be excited about that, I'm sure. But the question would be, because of the amount of interest in industrial from Van Buren to Yuma, if I can do this without advancing from here to here, we could easily, if council was supportive of having industrial from Van Buren all the way up to the interstate, I'm sure there would be a lot of activity and interest in that. So we're asking you if you're supportive of something other than industrial from Van Buren to I-10.
So either or both?
Right.
Anything but.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, I do know that years ago, when CTCA was built and then they bought the additional 400 acres to the east of their building, that they had hoped that they would be doing a convention center and all sorts of things. So I just was hopeful that in fact would become a reality. It doesn't look like it's going to, though, however, but it would have been wonderful to have that part. Then it could tie into the back end of them as well. So, but I like your idea about making Bullard a gateway, an entryway, and it can be done very tastefully, even though we do have the big cement buildings, because I've seen some of the buildings in the East Valley, and they've really, really done a beautiful job in the front of it. And you don't a lot of times even see the cars parked, and you don't see where the employees even go in hardly. So I appreciate all y'all are doing, and I appreciate your openness to come to us to ask us to change what we're doing to make it even better.
Laura?
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. I know that it has been important to increase our daytime population. In order to do that, we need the denser jobs. So it looks to me like the Trotter Track site and the around CTCA is sort of your focus area for that. And that's the innovation area, which I think is very critical to maintain. Bullard is a great way off and on the I-10. It's much easier than going Litchfield or Estrella. So as far as moving people, I think it's such a valuable intersection and a corridor. Personally, I'd like to see Van Buren to I-10 not be big box, anything like that. I know that the salsa place, is that considered light industrial or is that retail? Light.
It is considered light
Okay.
industrial, yes.
Okay. So they've definitely used been very creative with their space there. And I know then there's the office park, which is sort of a hub for small businesses and gives people opportunity to start things up there, which I would think speaks to innovation. Granted, we want to grow. The development we have, like MC Lewis and Chewy, I've had the opportunity to tour them. They're very dynamic. They're very important parts of our community. But I echo Councilman Pizzillo's concern. I don't want big boxes up and down. And I know the one property north of Yuma where we met with, I don't know if that's Project 4, they were going to be very intentional not to put their bays facing the street and that kind of thing. And that's greatly appreciated that there is an upgraded project. So I think whatever we can do to continue to up our daytime population, because once that land is gone, it's gone. And then people have to go farther out. So that's my feelings.
Bill, you wanted it back?
Yeah, and Wally kind of started to touch on it. And Katie, you mentioned when the Price Road corridor pictures were up and there was a green space along that one. I thought I heard you say we don't allow green space in the right of way or along the street. Yeah, so would we not allow this?
That's correct. At least that turf would have to be outside the right of way.
Is that because we have to maintain it?
I don't know if that's a state law now. Can I, does anyone know? Any peanut
Because
butter?
I'm looking at this thinking if we're going to enhance an industrial area, this looks,
Yeah.
I don't want to say beautiful, because,
Well, but that's why I said artificial turf.
Well,
so, yeah, so
we do have an, if I may, Mayor, council members, to answer your question. The property owners maintain the right-of-way adjacent to their buildings. I think what the concern is that, they would cut the grass and things of that nature, but not necessarily pay for the irrigation water to keep it green. And then maybe potentially have to go overseed. So there's all these sort of nuances associated with green grass here that I think the city has taken a previous stance on in terms of let's not go down that path.
so if we're looking to enhance an industrial area and we've got a very small component of that, I think that's a good enhancement right there. And as Councilmember Campbell pointed out, putting artificial turf there is probably cost prohibitive. However, we should be able to work something out that we allow this to happen. If we're talking about changing kind of our philosophy of things, that may be one of the things, if it's a self-imposed philosophy, that perhaps we look at changing that in a beautification rather than expensive berming or, setback, increasing setback, which it costs them money. Maybe they'd be willing to trade that off for irrigation or something else. So if we're going to put everything on the table, let's put it all on the table, grass included.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know those specifics of what you like. I did get a note that it is a state requirement that drought-tolerant plants have to be in the right-of-way, but that doesn't mean we can't reach out to those developers and find out if there are other solutions, such as pushing the turf outside of the right-of-way or using artificial turf, so we will that back to
And
them.
grass is considered a plant.
It's
You're just saying.
very
Lord.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Resistant. Yeah.
It's definitely not drought tolerant, but if it's a plant or not. But anyway, I think you get the gist of at least where I was headed with that, and I apologize for having to come back to that question.
Well, I
Thanks.
think artificial turf is good. I see it all over, and it looks good. So there are ways to put a little bit of green in there, along with plants, a little bit of green, and get that same effect. As far as Bullard goes, it was a total different design before, and I think that's where we got this idea of big businesses and tall office buildings, and that had to do with the city center. All right, they designed all the way around the corner. And I can remember when one of the developers wanted to put sort of a warehousing in one little section near the stadium. Oh, everybody went up in arms.
Yeah.
We couldn't have that.
Yeah.
I want Bullard to look nice. I want to see trees. I don't want it to look like we don't care about it. We just build it. And as far as buildings lasting, if we would have had a warehouse during the downturn, I'd love to have a warehouse. We could have done so many things with an empty warehouse. So when if they do move out, there are other uses of warehouses, and the other cities have really played on it.
Yeah.
They have party rooms. They have, they have colleges in them. So I think the worry about, like you have an expression, you say they never go away. No, they reinvent themselves. So I think on any of this, I don't think we ought to disclose that fear and live with it, because that's just industry, and you can't stop industry change. Everything changes, and it rotates, and so you're not always going to keep that same user in that area. But I think what you've gotten the view so far, that it's something that looks like it's cared for, something that looks like it was planned. It wasn't just built to get it built and get the user into it. It looks like the user is part of Goodyear. So they like being in Goodyear. They like what they see on the streets. So to me, to adapt that feel is important. And data centers are very important to us. We've been waiting. It's coming. And now it's coming in numbers. So we need to work with this. We need to figure this out. I think You know, I think the retail, you know, when you retail, we talk about retail, we're talking about you can walk in the door and buy something, right? In restaurants, well, we know that we have a small area in which to focus on those now. So only certain areas they're going to count. They've proved that point to us, all right? And we should be smart about the industrial that comes in. Industrial is not the way it used to be. Warehousing is not the way it used to be. It's higher paying jobs. It's a lot of technology in them. But I still think that we need to hold strong on making sure, and I have trust in our economic development, how the buildings look, you know, because I know sometimes it's a tendency to come in and put the cheapest thing you can put up just because your interest is the internal part, right? It's the high ceilings, it's what's going in it. So we just have to convince them that we do want something that isn't an albatross, something that looks like it blends into the area. So that's kind of my feeling on it. I don't want to put any set rules on this because I'm just aware of how many users are coming to look at us. And some of those users can blend in the same area. So I guess that's where I'm at. Mine's a little bit more cloudy and not so defined as some of the rest of the council. I certainly don't want it to look like, well, let me put it this way. When we drive around like even parts of Goodyear or parts of Phoenix or parts of Chandler, and you go down the street, you go, ooh, they didn't have planning and zoning, did they? Okay, so, and that's what you see in the older areas, all, you know, in the big towns. And so I don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like they had this use, but look how they blended it and how that street just all looks like it's running into each other, that they're all kind of going in the same direction. So I know that's kind of a cloudy visionary, but that's as close as I can get to this.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor, Council. I think we got the direction that we adequately need in order to advance these projects forward, help make them successful, and achieve council desires at the same time. So thank you for that. The second part of this question, which we kind of talked a little bit about, was in regards to something other than industrial, CTCA around and around that I-10-303 intersection. So I think we already got the direction from you from the conversation we just had, unless there's anything else that we
Is there
need
any
to see.
strong thoughts about that? Anything else you want to add? Yes, go ahead, Brandon.
This is the next bullet point. So we had two questions for you. So I think we got from you an appropriate policy direction on CTCA area and the I-10-303 area.
I just want to add to the I-10-303. I think that's going to be something special when that loop goes in. And I don't know if it's going to be entertainment, it's going to be a mixed use or what, but
You're talking about the Trotter area?
yeah, that Trotter area. I would like to see something of significance go there than just some big, huge box of something. You know what I mean? So I see that as maybe entertainment because you got that intersection of 303 and I-10. To me, you know, I could see even some type of a retail-based stopping destination in there. Some restaurants, retail, or even some type of an entertainment center off of that. Maybe we could swap it for the Indians and put a casino there. I don't know. But anyway, something that generates some general fund revenue for us significantly, I see at that location.
Well, I would assume you put this into your formula, and it's so visual. I mean, everybody knew where the Trotter tracks was. You could see it. Okay, and so it is. It's got to be one of our prized piece of land in Goodyear because of visibility of it and because of the 303 and the I-10. I can't imagine us just giving that to just anything. And I know when people come in, we have some guidelines that we could use. So, okay. All right, anything else?
Thank you. So, Mayor, may I go out of order on these slides? We have 15 minutes, and I want to be respectful. We're not going to get through this discussion in 15 minutes, but I believe that we could get through this discussion in about 15 minutes. Again, I don't want to rush you, but if we can maybe make use of, sir, rush away?
I say rush away too.
So I'm going to just go out of order and go with this one if that pleases you, Mayor. That's okay. So in regards to the single-family residential rental portion, I'm going to turn this one over to Katie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So As you've probably seen in recent months, we've had several of these projects come through. And for lack of better terms, we're calling them single-family residential rental, but they are like a traditional apartment complex, but instead of a multi-story, multi-unit building, they are one or two family dwellings. Since 2015, we've had 7 of these projects come through the city. One's built, 2 or other are under construction, but there are 4 more coming along. They tend to locate where previously multifamily was zoned, so they're taking these multifamily pieces. They have generally been supported by the surrounding neighborhood since they are lower density. This was a map that I understand was provided to you at the retreat. So this shows all of the multifamily projects that are in the city. And then the asterisks don't denote a special type of project. Those are just the ones that have come along more recently. So the projects there's 2 located here on which this is Van Buren and the 303. There are 3 proposed at the intersection of Van Buren and Pebble Creek Parkway. And then 1 proposed at Virginia and Pebble Creek Parkway, and then the existing one is on Indian School. We wanted to touch base, just a little more information. Typically, these are 12 dwelling units per acre, where multifamily is typically in the 18 to 24 dwelling units per acre, so it's a little less dense. We have seen some of them that are even 10 dwelling units per acre. So we aren't necessarily achieving desired density in some areas. There's certainly some areas of the city where lower density would be encouraged, but then there's some areas near commercial corridors where the lower density, we want to achieve a higher density. And also, just to give you, there's about 1,500 dwelling units since 2014 that are somewhere in the pipeline, and that's about 5% of our total dwelling units. So we wanted to touch base with you to find out, because we are continuing to get inquiries on these and throughout the city. So we wanted to find out if there are any concerns from council with this type of development, or if there's certain areas where they might be okay, certain areas where maybe they wouldn't be okay. And then if council does support these, because we have been getting so many inquiries, we have been doing a lot of PAD zoning with these because they don't quite fit our multifamily standards. And so if you do want to continue to see this type of development, would you want to give staff the direction to create a standalone district for these, so we don't need to use PAD zoning but could use a straight zoning ordinance district for them? So that's
All right, open discussion. Bill?
That last statement seems like a no-brainer. If we want to do it, we need to get a zoning to stop this PAD process. I'm very much in favor of these types of development, particularly the single-story component. I think where we've already previously zoned multifamily, people know that there's going to be a multifamily there. What its shape looks like is very important. So a single-story rental as opposed to a 3 or 4-story rental, those are completely different buildings, and I think we have to be very sensitive to where those things are located. But Katie, you said you said these single-story, if you will, rentals do not achieve the same density as the multifamily site. What's the advantage or disadvantage of the higher density? Why is that a big deal?
Thank you for the question. In certain areas of the city, it can be desirable to have higher density. So the general plan designates some areas, as we called it, transit-oriented development corridors, which is a planning term, so that there might be certain corridors where we want to see taller buildings, higher development. McDowell Road is one of those. So if we can get more units in that area, it can help support some of the commercial, retail, restaurant uses we want to see. We do also allow residential to be in the business and commerce section of the general plan, you can propose residential, but it has to be at least 12 dwelling units per acre. And again, that's the idea of there may be cool mixed-use developments that we don't want to have to do a general plan for. We want to get them through quickly. And so there might be sites like that where there could have been an opportunity for a more mixed-use restaurant with condos, and then one of these types of developments might kind of snag one of those multifamily developments. Now, other areas that are more residential, single-family in nature, this may fit the context really well. I'm talking specifically about certain areas such as McDowell Road, around, the regional center site, Estrella Parkway, some of those areas.
Yeah, so if you look at the map with the pink squares all over it, a lot of those areas are adjacent to residential. So a residential area with a lower density, single-story rental makes a lot of sense. And then, as you pointed out, we just approved a couple of weeks ago the multifamily by the commercial down on McDowell. That makes complete sense too. So completely different places, completely different markets. So I think we ought to do that, and I really think we ought to get that zoning language so we don't have to PAD all these, because I think that just drags us out for the developer and the property owner.
And just to add to Bill's, when you think about that, you think about how the look of the high rooftop as opposed to the flat. So if we go look on Indian School where we built those, I don't know what do we term those? The single family low roof. And remember, that was a concern of the neighborhood, and they did complain about that. But now that it's there, I think when it's a balance. When you look at it, you see that, and then behind it is the higher one. I think that's the point where you locate those makes a big difference. It needs to blend with the neighborhood. I shouldn't interject. I'm always last, but since you were there, I thought I would. So, okay, Joe.
Yeah, I'm along the same path. I think there's value in these single stories. In fact, I kind of prefer them over the other ones, to be honest with you, because it kind of blends in with the neighborhoods, et cetera, as opposed to seeing these 300-400 units kind of popping up, where the others just seem to kind of blend into the neighborhood. Because I remember that discussion we had when the ones on Indian School went, and now they just seem to be, part of the landscape on there. So if you got to tweak the zoning or whatever case to make it work, and like Councilmember Steph mentioned, if they're in the right areas where there's residential, it makes good sense. So I'm on board with it.
Laura?
Well, I sound like I'm echoing. I think that there's a place for both. I know that we've been hearing from the developers that there's different interests in different products, and we definitely want to offer a variety of products. I really like the mixed use, the kind of commercial, residential, creating a vibe, creating sort of that urban context in those certain corridors where it's really practical, and where we are really working hard to get that type of entertainment and restaurant development. And so I think that there's definitely a place for that higher density. And we're really low on condos, very few condos to notice, so.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to walk to a restaurant from your apartment or your condo or anything. What a perception, for us, huh? Brandon?
I'm going to echo. So, yeah, I would like an easier way for you guys to be able to operate and be able to navigate the best use. So, yeah, I agree. I think these lower density ones near residential is good, but whatever the higher density in the areas that will support more of the commerce, I think this makes sense. So I don't know if that's a different district or a overlay or how you guys go about the best way to do that, but I'm sure you guys can figure that out. And I said a question about these certain condo single families, or the single family rentals. So once they're zoned where they are, could they ever be, for some reason the market changes and no one's renting anymore, they all want to just buy? Could they ever flip these to sell them as condos or something that's as opposed to a rental type of thing?
Thank you. That would be, it's certainly legal, and there would be an avenue to condoize those, and it would kind of work like we use condo as a verb. So,
Yeah. I was just curious if that was a
Yes.
possibility or not. I mean, it seemed like it'd be, because most of them seem like are higher end, so some people might want to buy it one day. So, okay, thank you.
Wally?
I would love to see high-end condos come to Goodyear. I think we need them. I know there are people who would prefer to be in a condo than in a house, than in a multi-unit together, rather than in a duplex. So I certainly hope that whatever we project to developers who are interested in us, that we also project that we would love to see high-end condos wherever they would like to put them, as long as it fits within our purview where we want them.
Well, I think it's important that, and we are very open about this, we need to let the neighborhoods know and the city know and the direction we're going in, and give them an opportunity to give their opinions at all times, because this is a big change in Goodyear. I think it's a good change, but I do think we're being very transparent about it. So far, I like what I see. So have we answered your questions, or we have something left? We have 5 minutes.
You answered all of the questions. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for the discussion and the direction, thoughtful direction on our 2 of our 3 topics. We'll reserve our 3rd topic and schedule a follow-up work session. So
Okay, I
as
appreciate
important
that.
as it is, we want to have that conversation with you hopefully very soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, so I think we're going to just close this meeting, and then we have 5 minutes before we start the next meeting. So this meeting is adjourned.